When I first heard about Ratatouille, I really didn't think it would be worth seeing. A cooking rat? Really? What the heck are they smoking over at Pixar, I thought. So, being the naive person I was at the time, I didn't bother with it until it was out on DVD. I could not have been more wrong. This has to be one of the best setups for any film I've ever seen. See, rats are essentially the symbol of poor hygiene. They are right at the bottom of the food chain, living mostly off rubbish and leftovers, and they are the last thing you want to find in your kitchen. So imagine what it must be like to be a rat that is actually picky about what they eat, and actually understands what makes good food. This is the situation Remy finds himself in at the start of the film. But this isn't the story of an outcast that is frowned upon by society, or the story of someone that just wants more out of life. Remy is actually perfectly happy with his life, and the rats he lives with don't dislike him at all. Remy is actually thrown into conflict against his will, and the way that he discovers the chance to become a great chef is purely by accident. In the end, he only does it as a favour to Linguini. I cannot think of a better setup for a black sheep type story, where a character is judged by what they are rather than as an individual. And at the same time, we sympathise with Remy because he never asked for any of this. Meanwhile, there is Linguini. The backstory to this character is a bit more sketchy. He's the son of Gusteau, the former owner of the restaurant, yet somehow doesn't know this, and he has trouble holding on to jobs. That's all we really know about him. Throughout most of the film, he is merely a tool to enable Remy to work as a chef without anybody actually knowing that a rat is doing the cooking. Now, the way that they do this is pretty far-fetched. He can control Linguini's arms and legs by tugging at strands of his hair. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the point is that it's a device to move the plot in the direction it needs to go. There isn't really a believable way that they could have had a rat controlling a human, unless this were a sci-fi film. And that is the other brilliant thing about this setup. Not only is Remy something of a black sheep as a rat that is interested in food, but he's also a black sheep in the human world as a chef that happens to be a rat. No matter what life he chooses, it seems he's going to be frowned upon by society. I thought Colette's introduction was a bit strange. She is at first portrayed as just another chef in the kitchen, and it's only later that she is better established as Linguini's mentor. But there is something to be said for her harsh but fair teaching methods. She clearly feels a lot of pressure from being the only woman in the kitchen, and wishes to make it clear from an early stage how demanding a job she has. I also get the feeling that she feels that being a woman has held her back from being as good a chef as possible, and that she can live some kind of a dream of achieving more as a chef through Linguini. The problem for me is the fact that her relationship with Linguini is based on the fact that she thinks she is training him to become a great chef, when in fact he is just Remy's puppet. In fact, it's never really made all that clear if Remy even cares about Colette's teachings. It's clear that Linguini cares about it. In fact, it becomes very clear later in the film that he actually cares more about what Colette thinks than Remy. This becomes a real problem later on when the two have a romance, which, by the way, I didn't really feel added anything. It really feels like it was in there purely for the sake of having a romance. But I also do kind of wonder if Linguini is only taking Colette's advice because he's in love with her, and if having a romance was the only reason they made Colette a woman. But then later when Colette finds out that he's lied, we get the cliched thing of her going away to mope, and then coming back like nothing happened. I mean, he's basically saying that your teachings, your defense of him, and even the decision to take him under your wing in the first place were all for nothing. You were never training him to become a great chef at all. You're really telling me that you're just going to let all of this go? But other than the romance, I do like the relationship she has with Linguini. The sequence where she is teaching him feels very natural, and there is one particularly good line that she has when she thanks him for taking her advice. That's actually something I can totally relate to. I do a similar job to Colette, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is when people you are training simply don't listen to you. Skinner seemed like a bit of an unnecessary character to me. Firstly, it seems like he's another one of those villains that exists purely for the sake of the story having a villain. There is this subplot where he wants to gain sole ownership of the restaurant, then finds that Linguini is the rightful owner and tries to cover this up, as well as planning to use Gusteau's name to sell instant meals to just make a quick buck. But nothing really comes of it. He just gets fired partway through the film when he's found out. But what's even worse is there is a far better villainous character in this film in the form of the critic Ego. Ego is a great portrayal of that critic that is so well respected by society that people almost take his opinion as fact. If he says something is good, it means everything. His review at the end is one of the best bits of dialogue I've ever heard. He talks about how much pressure critics apply to others without really being under much pressure themselves, and the irony of that fact, given how even an average bit of work is really more commendable and requires more talent than someone just simply saying it's average. There is also a recurring idea throughout this film that Gusteau has always believed anyone could cook. A nice idea, but the problem is, this film makes it pretty clear that Linguini certainly can't cook. The first time I saw this film, I thought maybe Remy wasn't really controlling him at all. I thought it might be like the magic feather in Dumbo, just something to give Linguini confidence. But no, it was Remy the whole time, and Linguini never discovers any cooking talent of his own. Anyone can cook? Anyone except Linguini, I guess. It also kind of bugs me how Remy can understand human speech, but can't speak it himself, even though he talks like a human to the other rats. I also feel that these subplots give the plot a bit of a clunky feel. For example, there's a part where Linguini is starting to care more about what Colette thinks than Remy, then he throws Remy off the motorbike he and Colette are riding, and Remy suddenly finds himself lost in the middle of the human world. But then in the next scene, Remy is rushing to tell Linguini that he owns the restaurant, and suddenly everything is fine. And the scene where Remy discovers this also plays out like the fact that Linguini is Gusteau's son is new information to us. But it's not. It's new information to Remy, but we were told this earlier in the film. I think it actually would have been more effective if we only knew what Remy knew. But visually speaking, this film is stunning. The shots of Paris and the kitchen are just an absolute joy to look at. The sequences where we are seeing everything from Remy's point of view, both the ones that are one long shot and the ones that cut very quickly, give us a great idea of what it's like to be something as small as a rat living in the human world. In fact, I kind of wonder why A Bug's Life didn't have more shots like that. I also really like how the ending is a bit more ruthless than most kids' films. With the cooks leaving and the restaurant being closed down, it does show how society as a whole is not comfortable with change. So overall, the core elements of the plot to this film are just fantastic and cover some really fascinating ideas about how quickly society will judge and the fear they have of anything different. However, the film suffers greatly from having too many subplots, underdeveloped side characters, and an unnecessary villain and romance. This is kind of the opposite of The Incredibles for me. I was thinking about giving this film a 9 out of 10, but after rewatching it and really thinking it through, I'm going to have to downgrade it to an 8. And in the end, he only does it as a favour to Linguini. Oh, for Christ's sake. This film makes it pretty clear...